John Adams arrives in DC. He crosses the boundary zone of the 10-mile square. And it's here where he gets his first tribute at Union Tavern. It was either on this corner right here, you could pan, or possibly over on that corner where Union Square was. Union Tavern, rather. The military gave him a tribute. I mean, he was president at the time. 16-gun salute for him, presented with a nice formal address from the people in the town of Georgetown. What he said to his people that gave him the tribute were, "I'll receive with much esteem, affection, and gratitude from this obliging address the approbation you have the goodness to express in both reward and encouragement. I congratulate you, gentlemen, on the translation of the government to the city so near to you. As the country between the former seat and the present is beautiful and fertile in a high degree, I hope all the reluctance which remained and the virtue and talents of the United States may here be displayed forever for the preservation and protection of our country." So it was a very nice address by President Adams at the time. When he arrived here, it was actually spring. It was going to be pretty humid, a lot of mosquitoes, nothing but stumps and swamp and shrubs everywhere, because this was a very undeveloped town. There wasn't any churches, there weren't any schools for people. It was just getting built. In fact, the Treasury Department was the only building that was built at the time. Perhaps because, Alexander Hamilton, probably got his money behind that and his benefactors. The Capitol, built in sandstone, was only half complete. And the president's palace or house at the time was just being built. John Adams, of course, went over there to inspect how it was doing. He wrote to Abigail, "I like the seat of government very well," he wrote Abigail. And there was other people that were very positive about the future of the Capitol. One of them was the architect of the Capitol, the original architect, Dr. William Thornton. He felt that in a few years' time there'd be over 160,000 people here. Unfortunately, it would be 80 years before it reached that population. But all in all, John Adams was very positive about the future of DC, and it was at Union Tavern here where he had his first crossing of the boundary and a tribute to him in Union Tavern. Very fascinating stuff. So June 5th, John Adams rolls into town, having just stopped through Georgetown on his first entry into the city. Stayed in this area, Tunnicliff's Hotel, which I'll be going to in a minute to get our lunch. And he stayed at that hotel and waited around for 10 days as the rest of the seat of government, moving down from Philadelphia, joined him. That was his Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, etc. They brought all the holdings of the government in giant packages. Enjoyed his time here. He was doing a lot of honorary meetings, and he was in the middle of an election with Thomas Jefferson coming up in the 1800 election. So he was really in campaign mode, if you will. Definitely an exciting time to be in DC and to see the new president's house. It was not known as the White House at that point. And let's go ahead and check out Tunnicliff's Tavern, as it's called now. Why don't you walk with me? And it was probably quite a ride for John Adams as he came into DC. He came down through Lancaster, from Philadelphia to Lancaster, over down to Frederick, and then ultimately through Rockville. And then he finally arrived in D.C. again in Georgetown, and then staying here for 10 days. Wanted to do that route mainly for political reasons, because there was a lot of Federalists in Lancaster and the Frederick, Maryland area, so he had to get some votes. Fortunately, it didn't turn out too well for him, but Thomas Jefferson isn't that bad of a president either. Samuel Adams, that's quite appropriate. A little bit more of the rebel rouser as opposed to John, who was a little bit more of a conservative. Let's see if it's as good as John Adams would have had when he was staying here for 10 days with his incoming government. Hey, this isn't a bad gyro. Nice bit of lamb with some cheese in there, somewhat healthy. I'd give this pretty strong, give it 5 John Adamses out of 8. Not bad at all. Get yourself out to Ton of Cliffs Hotel, now called Tavern. Stay there for the drinks and get yourself a nice little snack. Cheers to John Adams, second president of these United States. June 6th, John Adams comes to McLaughlin City Tavern, has a giant banquet in his honor. The grateful citizens of Georgetown were exceedingly celebratory. A giant crowd came about. They arrived here. The local Georgetown paper, the Sentinel of Liberty, gave tribute to him. There were 17 toasts that evening, a lot of revelry, and pretty amazing that way back then on June 6th, John Adams was here giving a tribute as the President of the United States. Cheers to John Adams. After he spent all the time going to the various banquets and things in honor of him, campaigning in his tight race with Thomas Jefferson, he headed down to Mount Vernon Look at the sun gleaming through right now in honor of good old George Washington and Martha Washington. I wanted to come here and express his condolences and respect to Martha Washington after her recent loss of her much beloved husband, George Washington. And of course, John Adams was the vice president of George Washington prior to taking office as the president. Abigail Adams and Martha Washington were very fond of each other, visited each other when they were in New York and Philadelphia. Upon the death of George Washington, Abigail wrote Martha Washington, quote, "Permit a heart deeply penetrated with your loss and sharing personally in your grief to mingle with you the tears which flow for the partner of all your joys and sorrow." And so they both had a very close relationship, comforting each other after the death of loved ones. In Abigail's case, it was her middle son. In Martha Washington's case, it was her much beloved husband, George Washington. We're not going to go into Mount Vernon today. We've seen that on a previous time with our families, and it was quite enjoyable. We are going to go to the gift shop because who doesn't love a good gift shop? We ended up getting a Martha Washington postcard. What's more appropriate? Fond friend of Abigail Adams and himself. They really had a great relationship. After John Adams paid his respect to the recent widow, Martha Washington, down in Mount Vernon, he made his way up to King Street for military parade, and then also a wonderful banquet at Gadsby's Hotel here, now called Gadsby Tavern. He was joined by much of his cabinet, Secretary of State Marshall, as well as Attorney General Lee. And they had a great banquet here. He was noted of saying, "May Alexandria have commerce with its great sister city in Egypt." And he really had the best of intentions for this area of DC and for the Alexandria, which is right across the river. Quite an exciting time for him. Another large banquet, a lot of campaigning again, because he was in a tight race with old Thomas Jefferson. Before we go, I'm gonna eat one of those great summer rolls that the Banh Mi Cafe makes right across the corner here. So when you're here, stop by the Banh Mi Cafe because their Vietnamese coffee and Vietnamese tea are exquisite. iced tea. It's one of my favorites. And again, John Adams probably ate around this area as he was over at the Gatsby Hotel. Oh wow, this iced tea is amazing. A little cream mixed with the ice. Old John Adams would have been quite surprised to have chai yaw, which is a spring roll for Vietnamese delicacy, with some fish sauce. Oh no. Really delicate fry, not overpowering. Nice vegetables, and the fish sauce really tops it off. It gives it a nice salty flavor. Well, I don't know that Alexandria ever did have the commerce with its sister city in Egypt, but the Vietnamese cuisine has made it to Alexandria, and John Adams would be very proud about that. Cheers to John Adams, one of the best statesmen of our country. You're here. So that about does it for us. Although when you're in Georgetown, stop by Stokowski's. It's a classic institution here up in the back neighborhood where all the historic homes are, the beautiful architecture. I had to go with the old classic brownie and nuts. Love it. Look at that bad boy. And again, oh wow, so decadent. I mean, there's like fudge and little pieces of nut. Classic. In 2026, John Adams, it'll be 200 years since his death. It'll also be the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. What better way to give tribute to such a remarkable patriot and our second president of these United States by creating a memorial in our Capitol. I say let's do it. Let's get behind the committees in Congress. Let's get everybody together and get this remarkable man a tribute, because he was one of the most credible patriots our country has ever seen. These brownies for you, Mr. Adams. You and Abigail, two wonderful, incredible people. Cheers.